The pirates. Things had gone very well with everyone taking time to gush over Kareem and make sure he was stuffed to the edges with good food and attention. Of course, a huge emotional whiplash followed by a huge amount of care and attention coupled with a feast would tire out anyone regardless of species. And despite his vastly different biology, Kareem is no different. He was now safely oozed into his little tub, and after shifting his core around for 5 minutes, he settled on an indent just slightly up from the bottom. All that done, Beck had gotten to cleaning up a bit. A slight side effect of living in a desert and later getting medical training taught him to truly value the contribution a broom could bring to his life. Clean floors were just a step or two away from being sterile floors, and a sterile surface is something that's just plain useful. Apparently, especially so with a slobe child around. No telling what they might pick up if things aren't clean. The glitter and confetti shouldn't be dangerous for the kid, but it would be like catching those things in the mouth for a normal person. Not advisable, but not dangerous. You have a deep thought look on your face, Maka notes, and Beck looks up from his caring for the home. He hadn't even heard her slither up. Sorry, a bit distracted, he notes. Talk, she says, taking the broom with her lowest left hand and placing her bottom and mid-right hand on his elbow and shoulder respectively. Just concerned. I only know about slobe biology, and that's thanks to this thing. He taps his archive implant with a finger. But sociologically, psychologically, they're a very different species, and what may be friendly or normal to one of us could be a threat to him or frightening to him or any number of things. You have regrets already? Not regrets, concerns. You only really get one chance to do something like this right. I want to get it right. He deserves it being done right, not to mention needs it. Beck considers before nodding. I need to get into contact with a mature slobe, if not an artist or some kind of cultural leader, then at least a fully grown one. There's going to be 100 and more little things we're going to need to know, so I need to start digging. Well, there's no time like now, so get to it, she says, and he points to the broom. I'll finish up here. You get on your communicator and start figuring things out. That out of the way, he heads out to the balcony and overlooks his barony. The fact that he was the second highest legal power in the area, short of only his good friend and immediate superior, made him feel somewhat nervous about this. He had grown up on horror stories of things like this, the tales of sheer abuse of power that a caliph, or indeed a bey, Beck, could accomplish with just the power of law behind them. Never mind the artillery, space magic, and high-grade military training. For all that people in power often claim to be good and godly, there are a great many people they step on and ungodly things they do to stay there. He takes a deep breath and activates his communicator. Time for some research and then calls. It took him the better part of 2 hours to find anyone on the planet that was anything even close to what he needed. In the end, the best thing for the job was a Sloby woman that had been living on Vuxa for centuries, and a solid fifth of the planet's population of slime people were her direct descendants. The rest were recent refugees or family that moved in, so if there's any local cultural expert, it would be everyone's grandma. He double-checks based on the timing of things and notes she's living in Jake's territory, meaning she's about halfway through her morning despite Beck having taken a few minutes to watch the sunset in the midst of his searching. It had been a brilliant red with an almost orange halo due to a weather pattern in the distance. He sets things to audio and visual broadcast. He needs to look this person in the face and would be well served by her seeing his. It takes a few moments, and then things light up as the communicator projects the image of a woman made of lime green gel from the shoulders up. Who? Wait a moment. You're one of those undaunted men. Beck nods in response. That's right. My name is Beck Alley. I need some information, and you're the closest thing to an expert on the entirety of Vuxa. Might I borrow some of your time? Expert? On what? she asks with a baffled look. On slobes. I've adopted a slobe child and I want to make sure I do right by him to the best of my abilities. For that, I need to understand more about your kind. I understand the physicality of it. I have the files. But what about the culture? What do I need to know or do so that Kareem grows into the best slobe he can be? Best thing you could do would be to bring him here to me to raise. The differences between a slobe and a normal person aren't just, oh, he's someone normal but made of gunk. There's so much more than that. That's not going to work, Beck remarks dryly. Oh, yes it will. You bring the child here. I'll take care of him and you can wash your hands of this. Ma'am, he's been labeled a hlo-shabe, Beck states, and the look of utter horror that crosses her face makes him scowl. Keep him away and get away from him, she barks out. Lady, he's asleep, Beck states with a dry and thoroughly unimpressed tone. Look behind you, he could be there with a knife. She orders and Beck doesn't even blink. Ma'am, he is not the way he is by choice. He was torn from his mother partway through the budding process and she was murdered in front of him. He has done nothing wrong and has never willingly hurt anyone to the best of my knowledge, Beck states. It doesn't matter, he's still tainted, she rants, and Beck is getting reminded of home in all the wrong ways. Explain how he is tainted. He doesn't ask as much as command. His patience for this woman is already thin. We don't. She then gives off a groan of frustration. Listen, we don't develop in the same way as solid people do, okay? We're aware, completely aware from the moment we break off from our parents. I can remember the moment I stopped being an extension of my mother and became myself. There is no comparing that, no period like that in any solid's lifespan. It's comparable to the moment a digital mind first activates or a gravia is first calculated into being. Nothing, then everything. And the problem is, Beck asks, Hlo-Shab are born of death. The first thing that thing you've adopted was ever aware of was his mother dying. Male, female, young, old. It doesn't matter. Death was their first taste of reality. The first thing they know, everything they know is built on that first moment. Everything I know is built off my first moment. You've adopted a creature whose entire worldview is built off of murder. I think I understand, Beck notes casually. The slobe woman looks relieved for a moment before Beck skewers her with a glare. You're a coward, you and everyone that quakes at the thought of a child. Now, you will tell me what I need to know about raising a slobie well, or I will find someone else. Then, find someone else. She snaps and closes the connection. Beck suppresses the urge to hurl the device off the balcony and watch it fall to the streets far below. Ya Zabala, he says slowly, standing up and cracking his back a bit. He doesn't want to bother the people on the Dauntless, but it would be the best way to figuring this out. It would take them maybe half an hour to dig up a library's worth of useful information, but that's a half hour away from any number of high-priority research and intelligence operations. Well, fuck. Time to owe a favor then. As he turns, he pauses before sighing, because of course, Kareem is there, being held by Jezzy as they look at him. Nagasha are freaking quiet when they want to be. So now we know why idiots are afraid. They think that because someone's seen death that suddenly it's everything that person. Pure Kara. He grinds out. He really didn't want Kareem to see that. He's had enough shit to deal with without his people being unreasonably afraid of him. But she's right. I can still hear my mother's dying scream, Kareem says, and Jezzy starts holding him closer as she brings her tail up to coil beneath her. She clearly expects to be here and comforting Kareem for a time. Unless you suddenly start liking that for some reason, then you won't become a monster. I had hoped that one of the oldest and most experienced slobes on the planet would be mature enough to look at things reasonably. I was wrong. I'll be owing a favor to the boys back on the Dauntless, but I'll get everything you need to grow into the best you can be. Beck assures Kareem, who stares at him a bit, and then Beck's communicator starts going off. He leans over it and his eyebrow raises to see that he's being called back by the elder Slobe. He answers the message and finds himself glaring at a new green Slobe who looks equally pissed off. "Who the void are you, and why have you set my grandmother into a panic attack?" "Baron Beck Alley. I had called her for advice on how to raise the young Slobe I have adopted." Beck answers coldly. The Slobe man on the other side just looks confused now. "But, wait. Oh, for the love of—" The Slobe man slaps his forehead hard enough to distort himself. Perhaps calling someone other than the superstitious old woman when dealing with your traumatized child would be wise. "There are no registered experts on Slobe culture or psychology on the planet, so I called what I thought was the next best thing." "Right. Anyways, can you put the child on the line so I can speak to them? I'm not an expert, but I'm also not a superstitious idiot." "Not very generous to your grandmother," Beck notes. "She's long overdue for a regenerative coma, but she doesn't fully trust you people yet, so she's holding off." The Slobe man states and Beck nods. "What's your name?" "Mito says," he says, and Beck blinks. "My mother is fond of puns." "Clearly," Beck says before coughing into his fist and then glaring again. "I just want one thing clear, Mito. If you start laying into Kareem over things that were not his fault, then you will find yourself dodging more kinds of weapon fire than you can casually list. Understand?" "Understood. Now put him on," Mito says, and Beck turns the communicator so the camera portion can spot Kareem being held by Jesse. "Oh, yes, oh," Beck remarks as he walks over to stand beside them both. "I should have seen that coming." Mito remarks and gathers himself. "The first thing you need to know is that everything known about the Hlo-Shab is sheer nonsense. I've actually done some research on things like this. While people like you make popular horror movie villains, the fact of the matter is that you're no more prone to violence than any other kind of Slobe. So put that out of your head. I've looked through the arrest records of 1,000 different confirmed Hlo-Shab, and there was no rise in crime or anything compared to other Slobe. Then why is everyone so terrified? Why did what's effectively a tragedy become a horror movie monster? And why do so many people believe it?" Beck asks. "Because budding is very, very, very personal, very private, and downright sacred." Mito explains, putting a huge amount of emphasis on his words. "A Hlo-Shab means something has gone horribly wrong in the worst of ways for someone, which makes you think what it might be like to happen to you. And no one likes getting reminded of their own mortality, let alone the idea of dying while budding. Okay, fine, it's spooky, woo, whatever. What do we need to look out for? What will Kareem need that I won't think about?" "You're quick to dismiss death," Mito remarks. "Do you not fear it?" "No," Beck replies. "Really?" Mito asks in surprise. "Yes," Beck dismisses. "How could he fear it? The training might have killed him. The war might have killed him. The Dauntless could have failed and killed him. Leaving cruel space might have killed him. The pirate attack might have killed him. Joining up with the EFL might have killed him. Going on to Ashen Ducks might have killed him. It just went on and on and on. After the first time, he just stopped paying attention and lived." "Right. From the look on your face, there's a story there. But anyways, you need help. The first bit of help is how to hide that you're a Hlo-Shab. There is physical evidence after all." "The marking on his core?" "Yes. Usually your core has a slight wavy pattern going along part of it. It can show at what point you were when you fully became aware. They're usually near the end, like my own," Mito says, and his gel grows transparent, and his form shifts and thickens to allow his core to bob up with ease. It then turns to eventually show a slight dot of darker material with a mildly wavy contour. It's like someone dropped a little glob of paint onto it. The core then bobs back down and the form of Mito reshapes into the humanoid configuration before darkening into something more easily perceived. The difference between a Hlo-Shab core and a normal one is that marking is not only normally closer to the middle, but often jagged as well. Beck nods. He remembers seeing that slight discoloration, but it wasn't a mark of anything hurting Kareem, so he hadn't thought much of it. The line was mostly straight with a sudden jagged interruption, similar to how a heart monitor might show a slow but steady beat. Mostly straight with some heavily jagged portions, Beck states, and Mito flinches. Yeah, artificial Hlo-Shab, the surviving child of a murdered parent, Mito says, before blowing out what seems to be a lungful of air. Is it just an affection, or does he need to do that? Beck has no way of knowing. That's brutally unfair, kid. Hence why I need some advice to make things a bit less unfair for him. Beck reminds Mito, who looks surprised, then grins. All right then, question away.